Did you know that in America today, 8 to 10 million children have been diagnosed with ADHD, most of these being boys? In the 1950s, ADHD did not even exist. It did not affect our society at all. In the 1970s and the 2000s, many children, mainly boys again, were diagnosed with as being hyperactive. So how did we go from having a society with no attention deficit disorders and just being a little bit hyperactive to having 8 to 10 million children diagnosed and medicated for this mental illness? Obviously, it is undeniable that there are children and many people that are severely affected by ADHD, but there's also many children that are falsely diagnosed who are medicated and are harmed by these medications because they don't truly need them. According to Dr. Stolzer, a professor at the University of Nebraska-Kearney, the most common drug given to children diagnosed with ADHD is methylphenidate. This is an extremely dangerous and very addictive drug. It is classified as a Schedule II drug by the FDA. The other drugs on the Schedule II list are drugs like morphine and opioids, drugs that we are very well versed in being addictive and dangerous. So why are we giving this highly addictive drug to children so often? One of the main reasons that this diagnosis is so commonly given is because there is no specific test or telltale sign that says, yes, you have ADHD. It is a checkbox list of behaviors, and it is completely up to the doctor and what they think is right. It's completely subjective, and oftentimes the doctor will diagnose it because it is what the parent wants to hear or what the child wants to hear. Oftentimes the child being diagnosed with ADHD may have it on a smaller scale, but definitely not enough to need these highly addictive drugs. The questions on this checklist for the ADHD diagnosis are so subjective and so vague. Things like fidgeting with hands and feet, or climbing or running endlessly, or if the child plays quietly or has a hard time listening. These are all normal child behaviors. You're not going to have 100 perfect kids that are good listeners and aren't just a little extra hyperactive. It is normal for a child to play and run and fidget and have a hard time sitting still because they're kids. Yes, that is not to say that there are some kids that absolutely have a hard time with sitting down and paying attention for long periods of time that, yes, may need to be medicated, but should never be such a high number. 8 to 10 million kids in America. Like, that is so crazy that even there's that many kids that are having a hard time. But it is the parent does not know how to handle that child, and that is what is giving these parents the idea to go to the doctor, and the doctor is giving the diagnosis based on what the parent wants to hear and what the patient wants to hear. These parents think that by medicating their kid and completely draining them of energy is going to help, and it's not, because they're just going to end up with addictive problems and other issues that could have been easily avoided by just not diagnosing this diagnosis. There are many other ways to help and treat ADHD that aren't with medications, and those are things like a diet change. There are many foods that have been tied to attention deficit disorders. Things like Red 40, I'm sure a lot of us have heard that, and that has actually been proven that Red 40 has caused behavioral issues. Same with other food dyes. There are other preservatives and things that are more common in today's food that were not common back in the 1950s when ADHD was not prevalent at all. And obviously, as we start adding more preservatives and more colors and dyes into our food, then we start to see these more of these children with this hyperactive syndrome or this hyperactive diagnosis. There are a lot of other ways to help these kids, and there should be more ways that these parents and teachers are helping these children rather than just medicating them right off the bat. I think that that should be last resort rather than the first idea off the bat. In conclusion, there are undeniably many kids that truly do have ADHD, but it should not be commonly diagnosed, and it should definitely not be commonly medicated. These medications should be the last resort, and there needs to be more research going into ADHD, as well as a better standardized diagnosis or test to truly see if these kids really need this diagnosis. Rather than just their behaviors, it needs to be neurological or seen somewhere on a written test that shows an undeniable, this is what is happening, this is what you need to take, or this is what you need to do. We shouldn't just be medicating these children and even adults for what we think will help when it's really just an addictive drug that is going to cause them more problems in the future.